All right. Hi, everyone. We'll get started in just a minute. So find your seats. All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Greenlight Bookstore. We're really excited to host tonight's event with Elisa Albert presenting her new book, Human Blues. We're really happy to have her here, and she'll be talking with Hawa Allan, so you're in for a very excellent conversation. Before I turn things over, a few housekeeping matters. One, please turn off or silence your cell phones if you haven't done so already. And number two, please keep your masks on for the entirety of your time in the store. We're still requiring them over your nose and mouth. Number three, very excitingly, we have signed books for sale at the register. Elisa signed all of them, and if you'd like her to personalize, you can ask her to do so afterwards. She'll do that right here. Also, I don't know how many of these there are, but if you bought a book, you get a free special event poster tonight that Elisa designed herself. It's super cool. And she will also sign this with a cool silver Sharpie, and he writes very nicely. And without further ado, our interviewer for this evening is Hawa Allan. Hawa is an attorney and author whose work has appeared in the Chicago Tribune, Los Angeles Review of Books, Lapham's Quarterly, and The Baffler, among other publications. She lives and works in New York City, and we did the launch for her book, Insurrection, a few months ago, which was really excellent. Hawa will be speaking with our featured author, Elisa Albert. Elisa is the author of After Birth, The Book of Dahlia, How This Night is Different, and editor of the anthology Freud's Blind Spot. Her stories and essays have appeared in Time, The Guardian, The New York Times, N+1, Tin House, and many other publications. She lives in upstate New York. Her new book, Human Blues, is a bold, brainy, darkly funny, utterly original interrogation of our cultural obsession with childbearing. Very timely. On the eve of her fourth album, singer-songwriter Aviva Rosner is plagued by infertility. The twist: as much as Aviva wants a child, she's wary of technological conception, and she has poured her ambivalence into her music. As the album makes its way into the world, the shock of the response from fans and critics is at first exciting and then invasive and strange. Aviva never wanted to be famous, or did she? So you're in for something very special tonight. Elisa will be reading from the book, then Hawa will join her in conversation, and then you'll have the chance to ask questions after that, and then we'll all have a signing and hang out, and we'll close our doors at 9 p.m. tonight. So please give a round of applause to Hawa and Elisa.
Is this on? Can you hear me? Yeah? Maybe? It's green. How about that jacket copy, by the way? Good stuff. All right. Yeah, I'm good? Okay. I'm going to read from the opening of the book, so I don't have to explain anything. Epilogue is John Lee Hooker saying, I don't do nothing I don't want to do. Chapter 1 is voice. She was soon to bleed. God damn it. Another pregnancy test was negative. You are entering the real world, read the sign posted on the back fence of the property. It was New Year's Day. Trash was nestled in the weeds along the side of the road. Soda cans, fast food wrappers, plastic bags, and a handy white square still intact, upon which someone had scrawled, "This is not a condom." Negative. Again. She had been so patient, so fucking patient. How many negatives by now? More than a year. Fuck. Almost 2 years of negatives. Almost into year 3. And again, still nothing. God damn it. Negative. Again. She'd been easygoing about the whole thing for a long time. Whatever happened, happened. It would happen. Of course it would. It would happen. No need to stress. No need to freak out. The important thing was not to freak out. Everyone knew that. She was relatively happy. She was relatively healthy. She was still in the green half of her 30s. She was in a lovely relationship. And I have to sing this part, which I didn't think about when I wrote it. Time was on her side. Yes, it was. But at some point, a year of negatives, 2, going on 3, she'd gotten real quiet, confused, scared, mad, sad. She gritted her teeth, dug in her heels, and tried to find a way to inhabit the situation with a modicum of dignity. She read all the books, listened to all the podcasts. She changed her diet, her perspective, her expectations. She made space. She summoned the spirits. She gathered the bones. And still, nothing. 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 Negative pea stick upon negative pea stick upon negative pea stick. Cycle after cycle after cycle. And by now, she was straight up furious. Incensed. What the actual fuck? Now she was outright begging. Come the fuck on, please, seriously. There was no dignity in it now. Now she was foaming at the mouth. Now she was gnashing her teeth and muttering to herself. Now she was half insane with the injustice of it. Now, any pregnancy anywhere near her orbit felt like a low branch to the eye. Last summer, the tarot queen of the Berkshires had informed this tearful, barren supplicant that there were cherubs absolutely everywhere, all around. Great news, hun. You are positively surrounded by angels, which means that maternity is imminent. Yay! Wow, okay. But nope, and nope, and nope. Every godforsaken period, every cycle, every fractal seasoning, awakening, hope, decay, death, awakening, hope, decay, death, around and around, again and again, to death, death, death. Still, how many times had she recommitted herself to not worry? This wasn't one of those things that could be accomplished with the mind. The crucial thing was to put it out of your mind. Everyone knew that. You stopped worrying about it, you gave up, and bam. You said fuck it and spent your life savings on a trip around the world, and bam. You had a one-night stand with a plumber from Australia, and bam. You adopted, and bam. This was not one of those things that responded well to thinking. This was not one of those things you could tell what to do. So Aviva had officially relaxed. She had recurrently let go. She had surrendered over and over again. She had been so fucking resolutely chilled for a year, for 2, for going on 3, and still negative. Again, again, another, again. Fuck. It was unbearable. Ha. It was inconceivable. Oh yes. She'd walked a hard uphill mile by now on the dirt road out behind the property and stopped to catch her breath, after which she let out a guttural scream into the indifferent, desolate hillside, the chilly blue sky, a smattering of cotton ball clouds. Then she turned around and headed back, picking up as much trash as she could carry along the way. Soda cans, the fast food wrappers, the plastic bags, the handy white square, all of which she dumped into her studio trash can, on top of the umpteenth negative motherfucking pea stick, from where, no doubt, it would all eventually be transported to a dump by the side of some other country road.
Okay. So I finished reading this book not too long ago. I highly recommend it. Okay. This is your opus. This is this right here, like Aviva Rosner. We'll get into voice later, but it's that's what carries the entire book. You know, it's yes, there's this, will she, won't she in terms of, the pregnancy, etc. But at some point it becomes secondary to just following this character, this narrator, through her life, through her music, her journey as a musician, and in and out of the sort of, forays of social media, as in addition to assisted reproductive technology. And it's incredibly timely. I love it when books come out right when they're supposed to, right? So it's definitely going to resonate, in terms of the context in which it's been released, in addition to just in and of itself being an incredibly fun, intelligent, interesting read. And that's a lot to say for 400 pages. Brace yourselves, right? Or don't really, because like it's not going to feel like you're reading a 400-page book, but you can brag about it later and people will think that you're, you know, smart and like dogged, right? You'll feel really, it's like important holding this on the subway. Okay, I digress. So, the first theme I wanted to talk to you about was, of course, the body, right? And, you know, this book, what's so interesting about it, among other things, is that the body is like the inciting incident, right? You know, and it turns on its head the sort of, I think, therefore I am, the Cartesian principle. And it's, you know, I menstruate, therefore I am, right? So in that way, there's this sort of exploration of the body as a sort of narrative device, the thing that sort of instigates the narrative. And I just wanted you to talk a little bit about that first.
I want you to talk about that. I like what you're saying. I'm like, I don't know. The body. I mean, you and I talk about this all the time.
Yes.
I mean, our text thread is like very much about this, like about how I think one of the things that bonds us intellectually and spiritually is like this kind of frustration at living in a culture where like we're supposed to walk around acting as though what happens here and what happens here have no relationship to each other. And like, I can't do that. I mean, even if I wanted to, I couldn't. So now what?
Right.
And yeah, so like this character comes out of that kind of like trying to move through this culture. Like, how do you find a place where like this is acceptable too, and like it's okay to have both, you know? What is that, where is that okay?
And what's so interesting about it is that because you go through all the phases of the menstrual cycle, and I love it, it's like a very informational book without seeming like too didactic. It's not like, oh, like the author did all this research so they have to just tell us about now. You know, it sort of, it kind of like flows very well in that kind of stuff. But it's like the different phases of the menstrual cycle sort of, you know, have an effect on the character. And then that effect on the character then drives some of the narrative. Right. It drives her drives, it drives her, you know, her moods. And it's like, it's another way of like, you know, sort of doing this sort of internal kind of sort of narration that's not just about what's, you know, in the mind as if it's disconnected.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Like she's a different person at different points in her timeline. She's not a linear creature. She doesn't exist in some static state, and her responses are not always logical or objective. She's like a filthy animal, you know, as are we all, like it or not, you know. What, like humanity is like, what, 4 days of hunger away from complete and total anarchy? Like, you know, we've come very far, and we're admirable. Like, it's cool what we can do and build, and you know, I don't want to live 500 years in the past, you know, or 1,000 years in the past, or you know, I'm glad to be here now. However, we've also kind of fucked some stuff up,
Right.
in terms of our relationship to understanding what we are, and like, you know, and it takes a long time. I mean, I'm 44, and I'm like kind of still learning how to live in a body, and that's weird to me. Like by the time I figure it out, like I'll be dead. You know, maybe I don't know.
But what's also really interesting about it, and how, you know, obviously it's timely because now we're having these discussions about the state mediating, you know, being the sort of determining or mediating your relationship with the body.
Yeah.
You know, in the discussion of assisted reproductive technology, you know, there's an interesting way in which Aviva, you know, kind of exposes the way in which once you remove the state, like the big back state telling you what to do with your body, in some ways we ourselves have these sort of dictatorial relationships with our bodies. And it's so interesting how it's like in discussing assisted reproductive technology, which is of course is very normalized, whatever people should do what they want to do, but there's like a sort of, hesitancy with respect to that, and it kind of sort of shows in a way how, one's relationship with the body in that reproductive sense is almost like extractive, the same way that you might have an industrialist who's like, let's go and extract this oil, we need to do what we have to do to get what we need and what we want. And it's sort of like this mirroring of that, without having to deal with like the bad stage, right? But like, in that case, it's like you're opening up the question about your own relationship with your body.
Right.
And like telling it what to do and having control, all of that.
Right. Like fascists are not like elsewhere all the time, and they are elsewhere too, but like it's all fractal. Like we're all fascists in some way, like to ourselves, and we have a complicated relationship with power on every level, like of society, of being, of, it's like, and it's an interesting thing, like we want to disown it. We want like the bad entity to be that.
Right, exactly.
But and yes, there's plenty we can point to and identify as like the bad entity or a bad entity, but like it's not that simple. Like we contain the badness as well.
Exactly.
The fascism, the power struggles, the desires to control, and some of that's positive. Everything's so complicated. It's all so complicated.
And it's like, it's so interesting because it's almost as if Aviva's, aversion, to assisted reproductive technology is not sort of specific to that particular technology, but to technology itself. There's like there's an intrigue, but also an aversion, and it's sort of mirrored in the relationship with social media, right? And the portals that she calls them that people are carrying, and sort of like in a trance staring at, right?
Yeah, I feel so bad for those people. Oh my gosh.
So, but you also mentioned like control, right? So I feel like there's another theme that comes up in this book is, essentially, the G word, God, right?
Like, I can't believe you said it.
I know, I did. It's in and of itself, it's sort of a dirty word because it's like, you don't want to seem naive for having a sense of, trepidation about, kind of stepping into a territory that perhaps is a little bit more mysterious, perhaps more, fateful, and then that comes into your discussion about like control versus surrender.
Yeah.
Can you talk about,
Right. How do you keep that balance? Like, what is a mortal being? What is our role? What are we? How do you live like a conscious life and do right by yourself and by your community and by the collective? It's an unanswerable question, but if you're not engaged with like the sort of the struggle of it, then you're just kind of walking around sort of unconsciously directed by other people's interests.
Right.
Like people make money in the world off other people who don't care enough to like know enough or do enough, or what I mean? I mean, we're all part of the system, and it's like, again, like in every level of society, on every, parallels everywhere. I love what you said about industrialization. I think about that all the time, Everybody's, in these circles is kind of like awake now to this sort of kind of like, oh no, like maybe we've done wrong by our planet. Maybe we've misused our resources. Maybe we can't go on this way. Like, what are we going to do? But, in microcosm, that's like our bodies. That's our, we're sort of happy to abuse the shit out of ourselves while we bemoan it on a very large, grand scale. And
But what's so interesting about Aviva is that, she has her rabbi, right? I love that character. The character is very, very wise, right? It's like this sort of wise kind of, someone who's on the opposite of the speed dial, who whenever Aviva's having these sort of inner quandaries, she can call up. So that almost becomes like this sort of stand-in for this idea of a larger, sort of like divine cosmology, and this sort of she kind of checks in. I was curious in terms of writing that character, like the rabbi. Like, how did you feel about how did you feel about that particular role in the book? Like, because I felt like it was central in a way, but it's also somehow it kind of, I forget about the rabbi until he comes back again,
right.
But then he's in almost all of the scenes, right? But anyway, you can talk about that.
So like in Judaism, it's considered not wise to think through very challenging, difficult theological questions alone. That's how you lose your mind. For real. Like, you're not supposed to go into the deep, deep stuff by yourself. It's not a solo endeavor. And I think that there's something in that recognizes that, like, we alone, each of us on our own, like, we don't have all the tools we need. We can only approach and, like, figure out the complicated, really thorny, impossible stuff about being alive if we're in a, like, sort of a binary conversation with another consciousness. Like, in that activity is where something can possibly be understood, or, the word for, like, your study buddy in Judaism is chavruta, which means friend, and Lauren, my editor, who is amazing at what she does and in many realms, I call her chavruta, because that's what we do, like, with a book, I go off and I, like, lose my mind, and then, like, in working it through is when it becomes something that actually could be of value, outside of my own weird, fucked up sphere. Like, so that, like, the rabbi is, like, this kind of ideal, wishful person. Like, what if everybody had a really benevolent, wise mentor / guide? I mean, what if that was like your parent? What if you had like a, I mean, I think if we're really lucky in life, if we're like super lucky, we like have that built in. The next level of lucky is like if we like find it, and like what happens if we just don't have it or find it? Like, that's hard.
No, that because it made me feel like I wanted this rabbi in my life. In reading all their interactions, it's just sort of these moments of like extreme clarity and sanity, and it kind of sort of interestingly, like, I know now we're dealing with the Christian right is going to get us and all that kind of stuff. Not that there's anything wrong with that discourse, but there's a way in which this rabbi is this sort of like constant figure, almost like a rock, kind of elevates the idea of having some kind of belief system beyond the day-to-day, mundane sort of world that you're in. Can like be a sort of sense of solace, like a refuge, and it's like these sort of welcoming spaces in the book. That it's a great sort of balance to Aviva's just like imbalance.
Right. Right. Totally.
Which is totally entertaining. But
totally. No, it's like kind of weird and radical in a way to have like a portrayal of some part of institutional religion that's not horrific and abusive. Because like those stories are real too.
Right.
And they're important, and they are, it again, like even something that like should be positive, this realm that like really could be a place of refuge and solace and uplift and community and whatever, like it's often totally screwed up and destroyed by fascists, like, so, but I do think it's important to remember too that like this is another way in which like we're all responsible Like we're responsible for our bodies, but we're also responsible for sort of like insisting on finding something of value or meaning, like wherever we can. I mean, there's no like kind of mentorship that doesn't have the potential to be like a really fucked up power dynamic, you know? Teachers, clergy, you know.
Politician.
I mean, well, the word
Supreme Court
politics,
justices.
the antonym of the word politic is genuine. I mean, I just can't with that shit. I have like really low patience for politics. Like I don't know.
That's a perfect segue.
Yeah.
Perfect. You know why? Because I'm about to ask you about the archetypal figure of Amy Winehouse, right?
Yeah.
And how she is, in the book, more than just the celebrity or the beehived, you know, kind of, you know, alcoholic sort of, you know, persona, but she becomes a sort of like beacon to authenticity and having a real voice and real talent. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Right. Because like most celebrity is not synonymous with talent or authenticity. And like celebrity is like a whole nother fucked up realm in the culture where like, you know, we're all kind of like following around randos on our knees because we're told to, you know? And there's no there most of the time. And then once in a while there is the there, and that's really special. And we all kind of know the difference, but we still busy ourselves like, you know, following the wrong kind of people, you know? There's nothing there. Like we're just kind of like desperate for somewhere to like hang our spiritual hat. Amy Winehouse is like everything in this book. She's like the angel on Aviva's shoulder. She's the devil on Aviva's other shoulder. She's like, you know, she's the weirdly like the child who refuses to be conceived and like won't do what she's told. And she's like the cautionary tale who like be careful, because if you're like too authentic and you like refuse to play nice to like too far a degree, you know, you'll be punished in this definitive way. I mean, and again, like the body, like the body don't play. Like you can't abuse yourself forever. You can't lie to yourself forever. The body keeps the score, I've heard.
I'm glad you brought that up.
So yeah, Amy served as this like really cool kind of lodestar, and like she fits everywhere. Like she's like a shapeshifter in the book too. She's
I loved the Amy Winehouse sort of digressions. You know, and it fits so perfectly, especially since Aviva herself is a musician. But it's like you said, it's like the archetypal figure. It's sort of like a symbol of something, and you don't really know what it is, but you sort of feel the pull and the draw towards it. And it has this kind of like, numinous kind of like sensibility. And like that's what Amy Winehouse is. Like she becomes like a way of, you know, kind of critiquing fame, you know, while at the same time, you know, elevating what it is to actually be talented, right? Right. You know, and there's like this whole discussion over and over again about the book about voice and the fact that Aviva has this voice, right? So in addition to learning a lot about, you know, assisted reproductive technology, I felt like I was kind of getting an insight into the sort of musician's life, which is very interesting. I'm just curious about, you know, how that was writing a musician, but then how did you feel in writing the Aviva's character? You know, the issues about having a voice and sort of authenticity dovetailed with, you know, in music dovetails with that, doing the same thing in writing. You know?
right.
That's like there's like that.
Yeah.
There's definitely that conversation going on.
Totally.
Yeah.
Like the creative act.
Yeah.
I kind of believe that like the creative act, like at its core in whatever discipline is like kind of the same. The energy that it takes to make something, whether it's a sculpture, or a painting, or a song, or a story, I kind of feel like it's the same. You have to get to the same kind of place, and like not everybody can get there. and like there's like a million seminars you can take that promise to like teach you how to get there, you know? Like a lot of people will take your money. I'm teaching one at the Provincetown Fundraiser. You know, it's like, come join me in Tuscany this summer and I'll help you like unleash your creative, you know, maybe that'll happen. And sometimes I do think that like the alignment with somebody who's like authentic and real in that sense can help unleash it. Like proximity and just observation and sort of like, I don't think it looks like what people think it looks like. And again, it's something that can't be forced. And that was something that really resonated with me in the book too. That like, you can like do like NaNoWriMo or whatever. Am I saying that right? You can write like 1,000 words a day for the month and like clock it.
Yeah.
But like, is it good? Is it necessary? Is it authentic? Is it, you know?
Right, are you more focused on the output and controlling the outcome?
Yes.
Or are you in the process?
Right. Is it like a process or product?
Right.
And I am a big believer, and you know, some people think it's kind of hokey, but like, process over product, you know? The journey is the destination. Like, the product doesn't matter. Although you should definitely.
No, but that's the other thing, you know. I guess what is the most controversial thing about this book the length? Did I mention that earlier? No, but it's like
if only that was the most controversial thing about it.
But it sort of practices what it's preaching in a way, because like there's like in reading it, I got the sense that there's a sort of, you know, organic unfolding, right? Like when I was talking to you earlier, I was like, there's no filler in here.
I loved when you said that to me.
It's 400 pages again. No filler.
She texted me like, wow, like every page is like really good. I was like, that's the fucking point. That's what I was going for.
But that is a feat, and I feel like that it kind of, in the unfolding of the book, you feel this sort of the surrender to the process and this idea of not forcing it and allowing it, but while allowing it to fold, it's like you're getting the actual, I guess maybe what you're supposed to get out of a novel, which is like this sort of losing yourself in this other consciousness, and sort of this world building that seems authentic, right? So there's like, in the actual like craft of the book, the sort of, you know, this sort of ongoing, what you're talking about is sort of being demonstrated, like authenticity versus like fakeness. Like, do you want to have written a book, or do you want it?
Yes.
A book that is worth reading.
Right. Do you want to have had a child,
right,
or do you want to have a child? Like,
right.
It's really fucking hard. Like writing a book is really fucking hard. Like, lots of people want to have written it.
Right.
But
it seems like the most fun part. You know?
I mean,
until you do it, and then you're like, oh.
I complain about I'm like complaining when I'm doing it, I'm complaining when it's done.
Right.
It's all. But Rachel Cusk wrote a really cool essay in the New York Times Book Review years ago, 5-6 years ago maybe. She was reviewing 2 nonfiction books about assisted reproductive technology. One, I loved a memoir called Avalanche by Julia Lee, who's a New Zealand writer. It's gorgeous, crushing. And the other is like a very respectable, good, like informative memoir, you know, kind of research memoir. And Rachel Cusk wrote this review of the 2 of them in tandem, and she made a mess. She's like, I have been teaching creative writing for years, and people show up and they want to be writers, and I'm like, writers of what? Like, what do you want to write? And they're just like, I just want to be a writer. It just seems cool. And she's like, okay, it's not that cool. It's really hard and sad and lonely, and like the rewards are few and far between. And like, do you really want to do that, or like, do you, like there's some surface idea of what that means that you want to like claim and inhabit. But like, I don't think you really want to do that. She was making a parallel with having a child. Like, I want to be a mom. Like, do you know what that means? Like, do you? And people got really pissed. People got really pissed. I heard. I wasn't directly privy, but people were like, whoa. But I thought it was brilliant. I would look it up if you're interested. It's like a really good, well written. She's brilliant.
But it's like everybody, wants to have that, like who hasn't thought about themselves winning an Oscar? It doesn't matter what the movie was, right? Totally. It's like you don't even think about what went into that, but you see yourself in the dress and on the stage and think,
yes,
everybody.
Yes. Because you want to be loved.
Exactly.
It's being loved.
Exactly.
It's being like, look, I'm successful, I'm loved, I'm good, I'm worthy, I matter.
This is something I can point to that shows that I'm important in the world.
I'm
just a sort of a different orientation to the world.
Yes.
Which is ultimately kind of about, it's kind of materialistic, sort of like possessiveness, right? As opposed to like being, which is what this is all about.
We were talking about this last night, like the having it all.
Right.
You gotta have.
You could be it all. You can, as Aviva shows, right? She goes through a lot of different moods throughout the book. So she's, like you said, various different people. So, do you want to have it all? Do you want to be as much as you can, right? And it's like that's a different thing.
Can you have it all and be fully present and authentic? Like, probably not. Because that's a lot of like stuff like pinning you down in different directions, and like then you kind of have to orient yourself constantly to like inhabit something that you've constructed that's not, because you think you should, or it's fascinating. But we're all brainwashed to some degree. We all live in this culture. Like Andrea Dworkin has a really good line from her book Right-Wing Women, which I really recommend because it's like her exploration of like right-wing women. Like why would a woman, I mean this is the 70s, align herself with something that like is super oppressive to her? And her line that I love is rebellion rarely survives the aversion therapy that passes for being brought up female.
Wow.
In this culture. Like it's just a process of like socialized, like, shut the fuck up and do as you're told.
Right. And it's in Aviva's discussions, it's sort of like when she's a child, she talks about basically being dressed up like a doll. You're right, and that's just in the orientation toward the child is almost as a possession.
Yes.
Look at my doll. Look at my child.
Yes.
Isn't she so cute? And then once the body starts to assert itself in terms of that, puberty and body hair, bleeding, and all of a sudden you're not this cute little doll anymore. You're like sort of more of a force to be reckoned with. I don't know why that's.
A monster.
Okay, there
and uncontrolled, and then it's just like control it.
So you go from like a doll to something that is being sort of molded and sort of, shifted in certain directions that you don't necessarily want to go.
Yeah, but you want is like irrelevant because
Can we talk about desire? So this book is also about desire. Of course, there's a desire to have a child, but it's sort of like Aviva, in sort of kind of like appropriating her own body, is also wrestling with desire in various different contexts. But at the same time, there's this sense of like, should you just get everything you want? Is that what we're here for, right? And everything in society says yes. Every advertisement, oh, you have this problem, get this, right? That everything's pushing you to sort of kind of be on this hamster wheel, or this treadmill of like fulfilling your desires, right? And once you get one, there's another one that you're going to want, and it's like this endless sort of suffering essentially. But can you talk a little bit about that and how you
desire, insatiable, yeah. She's like hypersexual, and like that's kind of like an unexpected. You're supposed to like, especially maternity, like maternity and desire are supposed to sort of like be cleaved, you know, like you can be like a hypersexual person up until you're like seated, and then it's time to like, you know, put that away and become this different person. And like she's dealing with this ambivalence the whole time where she's like, do I just not want to engage with assisted reproduction because I don't really want to be a mother? Like, what is that? And she can't reconcile her desires. Like, they just kind of keep coming, so to speak. And she's, you know, like, if I was like a good girl, would I be able to get pregnant? Like, am I not able to get pregnant? Is this like not happening because like I'm not aligned? Like I'm not like good enough, you know? All these other people for whom it happens effortlessly, they're just like better.
Thoughtless about it, but then they get it, right?
And like, but they're like aligned with it in some, like they don't want to be like whoring out on the road, you know? Which is not, I mean, that's Aviva's construction. I don't think that's necessarily true, but she's like really trying to, she's of course like blaming herself the whole time. Like, it's me, it's me, it's me. What am I, like, what's wrong with me? Why do I feel this way? What's, you know, she's just like, you know, she's in like a vortex. But desire is like one of those animal things that like, you know, I think it's a good thing that we've evolved to the point where we like know more about how to keep it in check or direct it in the right ways, but it's still important. It's still like a vital part of life.
Right.
And sometimes, like, I think there's a danger in like controlling it or directing it properly, or like being, you know, polite, you know, well-washed citizens, like who don't transgress or trespass. Like the danger might be that then desire kind of gets twisted, or like the energy supply gets cut off in some way. So like, how do you balance that? How do you like not be like a, you know, like an animal in heat, but also not like completely lose your connection to this, like, it's like a power source, and it like you get information, you know?
And that's why it's so interesting, that's why it's so kind of like a philosophical book, even though philosophy is supposed to be about the mind only, right? And this is about sort of like the body, right? And how it sort of drives, you know, your mentality and like whatever it is that you do.
I think that philosophy that's supposed to only be about the mind is like straight sexist.
Right.
Like if women had been writing this stuff hundreds, thousands of years ago, like the foundations would be different. I think because we're not purely consciousness. We're not.
And it's like the mind-body connection, you know, the desire in a way. It's not just like a mental thing, right? So in a way, Aviva is honoring her desires because she's like, they're there, I feel them, you know, so what am I supposed to do with this? Am I supposed to just ignore it because of a purely sort of logical, sort of rational sort of construct? Or do I honor them and then therefore honor like what my body wants, right? And that's like sort of a really interesting, it's like, I swear it's so interesting. It's like, you know, like just like a sort of, I say a reappropriation of the body, right? You know, in this case, the, you know, female body, right? So.
Good stuff. Can you like hold up your book? Look at
Look
at that. It's like, that's hardcore.
It is. Well, no, not necessarily. No, but there was a line that I really liked that, you know, in talking about bodies. I speak 2 languages, Mae West used to say, body and English. I think that pretty much encapsulates what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, it's like some of us are a little too good at ignoring our bodies, and like some of us maybe not good enough at ignoring our bodies. Everybody could probably use a little rebalancing in one direction or another, you know?
Definitely.
Thank you so much for your read.
No, thank you for writing this. You can't see it.
I love, like, your like live texting of the reading is my favorite thing ever.
Yes,
Made my day.
I was live reading with the excerpts that I loved. Now, but I actually wanted to ask you as well about Amy Winehouse and the research you did. Do we have time to do that? Is that okay?
Yeah, and then maybe a few audience questions
Okay,
after
'cause
that.
I think that's very important because
Mhm.
there was so just in terms of the research, like I said, it doesn't feel like a research book in the sense that the research is being put out there to sort of show that it's being done. It's very integral to the narrative. But you actually did, like aside from all the like ART, right, art, right? You did go to London and meet Amy Winehouse's mom.
Totally.
Yeah.
I need to post a picture of us, actually. You're reminding me. It's been on my to-do list. Me and Janice. She's an amazing woman. She's like, I don't think she would want me to like say that like she's up for hanging out with like anyone, but like she's kind of up for hanging out with anyone who like loved Amy in like a true, authentic way. It's really uncanny because she's kind of got Amy's exact face, but like in a just really different context. And she's such a like warm, kind, loving, laughing woman. She's so chill. And we spent some time together, and I didn't really know what I was like looking for. It was super weird, and it was kind of like one of those like following an impulse, and like figuring out why later. But I'm really glad we got a selfie. She had me over to her house, and she lives a really modest life in this like very everyday house in like an hour outside of London. And she's like, do you want to hold Amy's Grammy? I'm like, wow. I should post that picture too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was like a very moving encounter. It really, and it opened up Aviva's story for me in like a super intense way, where I felt like I kind of finally understood, and like mom was like a kind of an alternative version of the rabbi in some way, where like the rabbi is like the spiritual father, and mom it becomes the spiritual mother, and Aviva's kind of like, what do I do? Like, what should I do,
Right.
mom? Because Aviva's mom is not helpful. Aviva's mom is not helpful, and when your parents or your guardians or your elders that you're given are not helpful in these matters, maybe they're helpful in other matters, hopefully, everybody's got their strong points, you have to like go looking, you know, or live without, and that's unthinkable.
Right, so it's like a sort of pilgrimage for Aviva,
Totally.
you know, and that's why it's also like spiritual in that way. It's not just fangirling. It's like she's looking for something. She feels like it might be there.
Right.
She doesn't quite know why she's there, but then she sort of finds it.
Process over product.
Yes, exactly.
Right, which is why I feel like I was worried in writing that part that it would feel to me exploitative, and that wouldn't have been okay with me. Like,
It didn't come across that way at all.
good.
It came up, this like it's doing double duty as a sort of tribute to Amy Winehouse. You know, for people who loved her music, but sort of, you know, kind of reclaiming her beyond just, you know, this sort of, like this figure who you know, whose untimely demise we kind of saw in too much detail, and sort of, you know, kind of putting a spotlight on her artistry by also raising questions, again, of authenticity and voice, right?
And of course, we were talking about this last night, but like, when she was alive and spiraling, like, nobody was like, what an amazing angel. Everybody was like, she's nasty. You know, it's like important to remember that too. Like, when we're watching somebody implode, we're very rarely like, oh. It's more often just like, ew. Right. And it's only after.
So they're deified in their absence, and all of a sudden everyone has something good to say.
Now she's likable, because
Right.
she's like in the ground, you know? And it's like, that's a real thing, you know, difficult. Aviva's really difficult, authentic, like, you know, not gonna do what's expected, can't be told what to do. That's not easy, you know? And there's like a reason we would kind of prefer that those people maybe like get married and then we can be like, wow.
Right, from afar, without having to deal with the immediacy of,
Right.
You know, confrontation,
Right.
right?
The complexity, the difficulty, the provocations,
Mhm.
you know? Should we open it up?
Yeah.
Anything we didn't cover?
According to my notes, no, I'm just kidding.
You're the best. Thank you. You actually are. Anyone? Now's your chance.
Hi. So I'm in physician assistant school and heading into the medical world, and I guess I would want to know, either in Aviva's voice or your voice, what would you say to the future medical providers, like the next generation of them, to make it a better experience, or just in general, because that's something that I think about all the time, the mind and the body and connecting it, and as a provider I really am striving to make that connection. So what would you say?
I would say that first of all, you asking that question puts you like in a different league from a lot of care providers. So like, thank you and Godspeed. And I hear the system sucks. So, but it's like really heartening that you're going into it with that attitude. And I hope you're in really good company, and I hope you fight like hell. I don't know what else to say, but that's, it's just nice to hear. It's really, yeah, I mean, it's a hard road. Anywhere from like a massage therapist, or even like a cook. Like anyone who like does anything that like touches anyone else's body, all the way to like surgeon, mortician, like I think it's such a huge responsibility, and it's kind of terrifying, like what we can do to each other on any level when we're engaging with each other's bodies and like not mindful and not careful and not kind and like. And you're sitting next to like one of the foremost health journalists in the world. No, she's in front of you. Jen Block. You guys should definitely talk. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right. Well, you can ask us semi-privately if you need to. Confidentiality and ethics. Thank you so much for being here.
Such a great conversation of ideas. Don't forget to buy your signed copy. We also have Hawa's book at the register. Those copies are also signed. They can also be personalized. If you already bought a book, don't forget to claim your poster. Don't forget to check out our calendar online for more great author events coming up this summer, and